We're here today talking with Brian O'Gorman of Clúid Housing Association. Brian, you're very welcome. Brian, firstly, can you tell us a little bit about Clúid Housing Association and what you do?
Clúid Housing Association is a not-for-profit company, so we build and manage social housing throughout Ireland. So we have offices in Dublin, in Galway and in Cork, but we operate almost throughout the whole of the country. We're a social enterprise, so we don't have shareholders who we pay dividends to. What we do is any surpluses that occur as a result of the business are ploughed back in or recycled to further the social mission of the organisation. What we have in common with all businesses is that we have to run a successful business. The more successful we are at running the business, the more people and the more households we can help. So it's very important to us that we get those business processes right and we're successful in meeting our targets and meeting our objectives. Clúid was established in 1994 and it was established by St Pancras Housing Association, which was a housing association based in North London, and they worked with the Irish community in North London and the community around St Pancras, King's Cross in North London. And that organisation was established just after the First World War and was mainly concerned with tenement clearance and housing people from the tenements and slums in North London, in Somers Town as it was then. And I suppose over the last year or so I've been doing a course, and one of the aspects of the course that we looked at was culture, and in terms of the culture of organisations. And one of the fascinating things for me in that study was the fact that the culture that ended up being imbued in Clúid Housing Association was the same culture which informed the activities of St Pancras, even though there was 100 years between those organisations.
So stickability really seems to matter. So how would you describe that culture?
I think a strong sense of professionalism. We would consider ourselves to be professional property managers. So just because somebody's on a social housing list and gets a tenancy with Clúid, they can expect standards which exceed anything that's in the private sector, or at least meet anything that's in the private sector. And that would have been, and that's true for us, as it was true for St Pancras. They were the first ones who established, their first property manager was the first professionally qualified female chartered surveyor in the UK. So they, right from the word go, they had a very clear ethos towards professionalism and providing professional services. The other very close tie-in is in terms of innovation. We've always been very keen to bring forward new projects, to pilot new schemes and so on. One thing that we've done in the recent past, we've piloted a mortgage to rent scheme for people with unsustainable mortgages, where we would go in, we buy the property, they become our tenant, but importantly, the family don't lose the home, they remain in the community. And similarly with St Pancras, they pioneered lots of things, the slum clearance and the regeneration of those important inner city boroughs of London as well. So again, those kinds of things, they're very prevalent in our culture as they're prevalent in St Pancras culture. So it was kind of amazing to see that. And the other aspect of it, I suppose, was that we have in quite common is this whole emphasis we have on collaboration. What we are is a business, we're easy to do business with, so we can collaborate with a wide range of partners. And that mirrored St Pancras, who collaborated over the years with both British Rail, in terms of developing all around King's Cross and St Pancras, but also with local authorities, with private businesses and so on. That's what we have in common. So
would you be a very value-driven organisation? I mean, how important is it for your employees to live those values?
I think it's important that, it's important first of all. I remember there's a guy called Peter Drucker who's a famous business guru who said, he has this looking in the mirror test where you look in the mirror and what you see is what you actually get. So that I think if you have values, you need to be able to live them, and they're not just for annual reports, they're not just for the website and so on. You actually have to imbue your activity with them, and I think staff soon find you out if you pull short of those values. And I think once you establish them and you begin to work and your activities begin to exemplify those values, it becomes impossible to row back, because staff won't let you row back. I mean, if they're used to being consulted and all of a sudden you transgress, or you just want to get something through quickly, you're stopped. You need to be consulted if you want to bring people along. If that's the way they're used to being and that's the culture that they've embraced, you can't just shortchange people.
So if I join Clúid tomorrow, how would I get a sense of the values in the organisation when I join?
You get a very strong sense of the professionalism of the organisation. All our property managers are licensed property managers. So there's a very strong professional ethos. So coming into the organisation, you get that first off. If we don't manage to recruit people with the requisite qualifications, we put training in place to make sure they get them. So that's the most obvious thing that's there for you. Also, you're challenged from the word go. You're not. Once you come into Clúid, you're not somebody who needs direction, who needs to be managed. You're a self-starter. You're somebody who autonomy is passed down to you. If you're working for Clúid, you're working a lot on your own initiative. You're having to make decisions. We have quite a strong culture of putting decisions to the people who work on the ground, who are the best people to make those decisions and the best people to know what the right decision is to be made.
And are there practices that you have in place here that make you particularly proud?
I think, for fear of repeating myself, I think it is those two things. I think it is that professionalism and that innovation and entrepreneurship, which I think is the most, to me, the most rewarding part of working for Clúid. It's that feeling that it's not the same, that it's challenging, that we are taking on new things all the time. Housing is constantly changing. Yes, we've been through a period of time in which, because we're a housing association, we're inextricably linked to the property market. So the collapse of the property market really badly affected us. We had to reorientate, we had to change all our activities, the way we did everything, the way we procured new schemes, the way we built housing, the way we managed our stock even. But that's part of the challenge. We're not immune to difficulties. And certainly I suppose what I was very proud of in terms of the association at that particular point in time was, there was a period of time when people thought, well, look, things are so bad now, maybe we should just consolidate and just, go into our shell and wait for things to improve. But that was never really considered as an option in Clúid, that we have a social mission that we want to fulfill, that we need to fulfill. And there are people on housing lists who rely on us to keep going and to keep building and keep providing housing.
You mentioned your vision. So what exactly is the vision of Clúid Housing Association?
The vision is that everyone has a great place to live.
People often don't think of the voluntary sector as necessarily a great place to work. How do you manage that perception?
We have suffered from that comparison. I'll be perfectly honest. It's sometimes viewed that it's not good for your career. In other words, that coming to work in a not-for-profit and so on, it's not the best career move. It's not quite career suicide, but it's not quite the best career move in terms of your CV. But what we believe is we offer very challenging jobs, well-paid jobs. The conditions are good here, and I think that's important, that we can offer conditions which are comparable to the private sector. And yes, and the challenges will be great, but they will be worthwhile, and it will be rewarding work is the other thing. And it's not, unfortunately, the voluntary sector often does have this perception of, people going around in woolly jumpers, playing guitars and singing songs and so on. But, as I said right at the beginning, we can only be as good and help people in that we are a successful social business. So that's the tie-in we have to businesses. We're only as good as we are at being a good business. You're
a great place to work with high trust levels. What part do you think trust plays in building that really great workplace?
I think trust plays a key role in because I think it links quite closely into the way staff do their work, the way staff perform their work. If it's an organisation that they can trust the values, they can trust the standards, they can trust that, yes, they're doing their work, but everybody else is doing their work as well. I think that's important. It means that people can come to work, they can be challenged in their work, yes, but they can ultimately get satisfaction that they're making a difference, that their output is very high and it's very, 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 very valuable.
Are there business benefits that you've experienced in your organisation have been a great place to work?
I think one of the things that has changed for housing associations is that for years we operated below the radar. I think now we're front and centre. We're the people who are developing the social housing, not the local authorities. We're doing it in partnership with the local authorities, but we're front and centre. We're out there in front now, whereas previously we weren't. competitions, or I wouldn't say competitions, but being involved in something like Great Places to Work is of huge benefit to us in terms of profile, not just in terms of attracting employees in, which is very important to us, but also we're in extremely good company. You know, a lot of very good, very high-profile companies take part in the Great Places to Work, and we want to be up there with them. We want that recognition as well. And what's very important to us as well is that social housing, if you like, has and always has had often very negative connotations. And that's something which is very key for us to dispel, so that what we try to do is we try to develop mixed communities with social housing alongside private housing, along with market rental housing, that they become indistinguishable. And by very high property management standards, we can make them indistinguishable, so that whereas where we go to build a development of social housing, we might get objections. We know that once we're in there, once we're managing the property, and once the tenants have moved in, within a month or two, that's completely dissipated. And that's what's important to us, to make social housing just ordinary housing.
Your motivation, your own motivation, your philosophy, what actually inspires you?
I think my own inspirations, I suppose, would be that the person who founded Clúid at the time was the chief executive of St Pancras in the UK. And he was a man called Adrian Norwich. Now he's since retired, but he would have been, I suppose, a great inspiration to me in terms of what he gave to the organisation and set it up, and those very high values that he brought to the organisation was very much the values that he had from St Pancras. But he was so strong and lived those values so well that they got transferred almost intact across to Clúid, which I think was a testament to the man. And they are those values of service, of respect for customers, of doing, you know, the absolute best that you can to help and to raise housing standards and housing conditions.
So let's say there's other organisations in the not-for-profit sector and the voluntary sector considering joining and starting on a journey towards creating a great place to work. What advice would you give them?
I think I would. It's been a very positive experience for us. We've been here. We've been doing it now for 3 years, and it has been positive. It's been an effort. I'll be honest with you, okay? But it's an effort worthwhile in the sense that I think you are required to follow through. In the sense that there's no point in doing it if you just sit on the results. What we did was after we got the first results, we brought together a group of staff from all levels within the organisation. And they met on a regular basis then to work on those areas which we had, you know, which we scored quite low in. But it identified for us where we had to work. I think the other piece about it is, which again I would encourage all organisations to get involved, particularly on the not-for-profit sector, is that what you get, because it's very anonymity is a huge virtue to it. The things that staff report on the Great Places to Work, you will never hear about in any staff surveys that you conduct yourself. And I do think that's important. And also I think the analysis and the breakdown of those results that follows from the competition or from the exercise, where, you know, somebody comes and visits, they break down those results. So you get a very good sense of the areas that you need to work on. And sometimes you do get a number of surprises about what you need to work on, and things that you thought you weren't particularly good at, you know, you'll be surprised you might be good at as well, you know, so it works both ways. But it helps you to target your resources as well where you need to target them.
Brian, thank you very much for your time today. It's been inspirational talking to you. Your vision is building a society where everybody can have a great place to live. Hopefully you can deliver on that further by continuing to be a great place to work.